Welcome back to the Dialed In Angling podcast presented by Onyx Fish, Strike Master Ice Augers, St. Croix Rods. Currently, I am sitting in a wheelhouse in Ottertail County with Randin Olson. We've got underwater cameras down, big screen TVs, and lots of fish. That's all I'm going to tease out about this episode. Randin, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, I'm happy to be on here. It's been a pretty fun day.
You know, it's cold outside. It's nasty. It's a typical January day, but we're in the wheelhouse. When I think of fun fishing experiences, it doesn't get a whole lot better than wheelhouse fishing with an underwater camera down. I can think of so many scenarios in my life where I was ice fishing, and that ice fishing experience was enhanced by using an underwater camera. And today was no different. I do not want to spoil this episode, but people listening to the podcast are going to want to tune in because it truly is a cool experience that anyone can do, either experience if they have their own wheelhouse or they can rent a wheelhouse from a guy like you. Randin is the owner of Lockjaw Guide Service out here in Ottertail County. Randin, tell me a little bit about yourself. I know you guide in the summer, in the winter, you rent houses. Kind of how do you run your guide service? Let's just start with winter.
Well, winter, we kind of focus more on the wheelhouse stuff. We do some guiding out of portables and then the run and gun stuff, and I really like doing that. But we kind of focus more on setting houses on great spots and getting guys in there and letting them enjoy the weekend. You know, bring their family, bring their kids, bring their friends, whatever they want to do, and really just kind of experience what it's like to sleep on the lake and catch a few fish while you're doing it.
Yeah. The rental experience is great. You know, he's got wheelhouses, putting it on panfish like we experienced today. You're definitely going to want to sign up for something like that. But I love, I love staying on the ice. I like the ice camping in the portables, but I really like the staying out in wheelhouses, that whole experience. When you do a full day and night on the ice, it's super fun. You experience everything from catching fish all day long to playing cards to, hooking up to TV or watching football today. I mean, it is a cool experience, for anybody, especially people from the Midwest that know what we're talking about, but others that maybe outside the ice belt that have never experienced it. It's pretty unique to this region of the world.
It really is. It's definitely something, if you've never done it or never experienced it, you really have to do it at some point in your life. I don't care if it's with me or anybody else. You need to try this. This is such a cool deal. And like you said, it's just a Midwest thing. It's a kind of a 5-state area really that can do this. And it's pretty neat. It really is.
Yeah. So, talking about Ottertail County in general, I mean, there's 1,000 lakes in this county. Is that
1,048 lakes, and those are just the ones that are over 10 acres.
Every time I come to this area and I'm driving down the road, it's like, oh, there's a lake. There's a lake I want to fish. There's another one I want to fish. There's a lake I want to fish. There's so many lakes in this area. You grew up here, right?
Yep.
You're from the area. So tell me, how did you get your start, guiding or fishing or whatever? Just take me back all the way to the beginning for our listeners.
So my dad was a hardcore walleye guy. That's all he ever fishes for. He still does. He's a great walleye angler, a lot of tournament wins, stuff like that. And I grew up dragging a Lindy rig like a lot of guys around here did. That was my childhood, dragging Lindy rigs, catching fish. And I've just always really loved fishing. It's kind of been the one thing that I always kind of just understood, if that makes sense. It's just kind of not easy because fishing's not easy, but it just kind of made sense in my brain. So I started this as kind of just a little side gig. I started taking some friends out, to take some family members out. And I never dreamed it would turn into this. And it just kind of morphed into this over the years. And a lot of that is due to the guys I've met, like you, and a lot of other people that I've met in the industry. They've kind of helped me along with this, but it's really a dream come true. And I'm sure everybody that's in this industry says that, but this really was a dream for me growing up.
Yeah. It always starts out, I'm the same way. I'm just a fish head like you. But how do you go from being a fish head to bouncing right into guiding? I know for me, it took me a few years. I had to work a real job. I always tell people I had a real job for a couple of years because I haven't had one since, even though I probably work harder now than I did when I had my real job. But like for you, where you said you started part-time, Was that part-time guiding, part-time renting houses? I mean, how did you start and then get to where you're at now? Was it summer that you started and then the ice came, or vice versa?
It was definitely summer that I started. I was an HVAC guy for 10 years. Before
Okay.
that, I was a plant manager at a painting company for quite a few years. And I started guiding back when I was doing the painting company stuff. And it was, 1 or 2 trips a year. And I never put as much, I didn't think it would go this far. It was something kind of fun to do on the side. And the more I did it, the more trips I did, the more I realized how much I really enjoyed figuring the pattern out and teaching somebody to do it in a few hours. And I think as a guide, and you can know this, you have to love to watch people catch fish.
Right.
And that's kind of what I get out of it. When I can take somebody out, whoever it is, and teach them a pattern and watch them succeed at it, that's kind of where this kind of passion grew. And the more I got to see that, the more I wanted it back again. And I would try to get more trips and more trips and more trips. And it was a very slow process. I never went on a guide trip, so I didn't know what to kind of run when I started this. And I just kind of took people out and did what I thought what they would like to do, the way I thought they would like to do it. So getting into this, it was a lot of fun for me to figure out what my niche was in the guiding industry. I think we all have our certain strong points that we do. We all kind of fish differently, but we all kind of fish the same. And for me, finding that niche of my own was a big part of where I've got to now.
So your niche, your passion, what's your favorite thing to fish all year? I mean, regardless of let's just nail down a species, open water, ice fishing. What's your favorite species to target?
100% muskies.
Okay.
That's
I was on your website and I know you, so I know you're passionate about muskie fishing. I personally never caught the muskie itch. I did guide up at Lake of the Woods in the Northwest Angle, and I guess I got the muskie bug a little bit when I was up there, and I've certainly caught plenty of muskies, but it never was like took me, took over. I know there's certain aspects of fishing that I have to scratch that itch. It could be a topwater bite for smallmouth, or certain times of year the bite changes. Even ice fishing, it could be fishing bluegills at certain times of the year. But throughout the year, there's time periods where I have to chase that species. That's what I need to do as a angler and as a guide. So is it sort of like that with muskies for you, or did it start slow? I mean, walk us through it here.
So I had a friend take me muskie fishing once, and to be honest, I didn't want to go. I had heard all the horror stories. It's a fish of 10,000 casts. You're going to go out there and break your shoulders and not see nothing. And I was lucky. I caught a 47 incher my first time out. It took me about 4 hours and I caught one. And after I felt that fish pull, that's what did it for me.
Sure.
Weirdly enough, I actually snagged it in the tail. It must have swiped at the bait and caught the hook in the tail, something like that. So it was an extra fight.
Sure.
And that's kind of what did it for me and got me hooked on it. But like you said, there's, the fall is my favorite time to muskie fish. That's when the real big fish show up. You can use live bait. You got a bunch of fish shallow. There's just a whole bunch of different ways you can catch fish. And then to your point, when a walleye opener hits, I gotta get that bite on that jigging minnow or that jigging of plastic or whatever. Yep. I gotta feel that thump. And same thing kind of when the crappie spawn starts. I love to find those fish out in mid-lake stuff and find those fish that nobody else is chasing, not the ones in the reed beds. The different chase of it. So there's definitely throughout the seasons, the largemouth bass bite. I love a topwater bite. If you don't like a topwater bite and you're a fisherman, I don't know what's wrong with you. Something is.
Right.
There's nothing like seeing a fish blow up on a bait. But if I could pick one season and one fish, it would probably be the fall and the muskie, just because there's something about seeing a 4-foot fish come up to the boat and chase your bait around, and he doesn't care that you're there. That's what the coolest part for me.
Yeah, I think, the fight is obviously cool with a muskie, but for me, muskies, it's just seeing them, the way they come up, and they kind of are like submarines sometimes, or they just appear. I get it a lot. Well, now I see them a lot more with forward-facing sonar. But prior to that, when you'd see one, just the overall size and how thick they are across the back, and just how they just dominate that system. You're not afraid of anything. I mean, when they're there, they're the top predator, And so seeing muskies for me, when I see a fish come up, and let's say chase a walleye or chase one of my baits back to the boat when I'm walleye fishing or bass fishing, it's still super cool to me. I still get that rush. I was fishing with a friend of ours, walleye Will Pappenfuss, and we were talking muskies and seeing them on forward facing sonar. And I still get that rush of the first time I saw a muskie. So same way when I see big pike. I love big pike. I just how cool and awesome they look when you see how large those fish actually are when they come up to, your baits, or you bring them in, you catch one. I would say I catch just as a bycatch, and this is not even with forward facing sonar. I mean, I could target a lot more muskies now with forward facing, but just as a bycatch, I probably catch half a dozen muskies a year by accident on baits that are always amazing to me, that they hit that thing, like a paddle tail or a jerk bait. They love jerk baits. When I'm smallmouth fishing is when I catch most of the muskies that I catch throughout the year.
Yeah, it's they're just such a cool fish, and I don't know, everything about them is just so cool to me. I think, when I see that fish, that rush I feel, it's the same rush I feel when I'm pulling a Lindy rig and feel a walleye smack it, or see a bass chase my top water. It's the same rush. It's just, I don't know. It's such a big fish. And I think a part of it for me now, where I'm at now, like I said, I love to watch people catch fish. So I think that's part of the reason why I love muskies so much, because I'm okay with not catching a fish. And I think to be a good muskie guy, you have to kind of be that way.
Yeah.
Because it is a tough fish to catch, no matter what you're doing, forward facing or not. It is a tough fish. So I think that's a big part of why I love them so much, is I'm okay with going home empty.
Sure. I think that's why I kind of gravitated not to guide for those species, because it drives me nuts if I don't catch something. Now, as far as your winter business, you're in the rental business. What we experienced today, I do not want to spoil the entire Dialed In Angling episode, but what we did today, I actually brought my own wheelhouse out here. Randin was nice enough to put me on a spot, and him and I had a great time in the wheelhouse together. But when it comes to, the rental business in the winter, as a fellow guide that spends a lot of time on the ice, we've had some really brutal winters, in the sense where we've got dumped on with snow. You get slush that comes up. You have days where you're breaking everything you own just to get out to your rentals. I mean, what are some of the worst, like the nightmare experiences that you can remember as a fishing guide and someone who rents out a lot of wheelhouses?
Well, a few years ago, actually on the lake we're on today, I was getting everything ready. It was a Friday morning. There was some wind forecasted, and you can kind of see today, because it's a crappy day outside, that the wind across this lake blows pretty good. It picks up a lot of snow and it moves it around, and everything was looking pretty good. It was a nice, calm, sun-filled day. Got all the houses ready, all the heat's on, everything, and I'm actually driving back to the access to go meet somebody, and the wind just kicked up out of nowhere. And I was about a third of a mile out from the access, could not see the plow in the front of my truck. Visibility was that bad. I ended up sitting in my truck for 10 hours that day.
10 hours?
10 hours. I had people calling me, "Hey, I'll come get you." I'm like, "I can't see my plow. Like, don't leave your house. I'm warm. I got a full tank of gas."
And you're stuck.
I'm stuck. I can't go anywhere in my truck.
When you're stuck in a plow truck, you're stuck.
You're stuck.
Especially like if you have a V plow where you can kind of articulate and get yourself out most of the time. But if you're stuck, you're stuck. You're hung up on the plow. Yeah. 10 hours is stuck.
Yeah, it was bad. I read a bunch out of my Bible. I cleaned my truck about 10 times. It just, there's nothing you can do. You're stuck in your cab of your truck. So.
What you must have had some snacks in the truck?
I had some peanuts and a couple bottles of water.
Okay.
Ever since then, I've got a lot more food in my truck, but that day I wasn't quite prepared for it.
It's too bad you weren't stuck next to one of your rental houses. You could have went fishing.
That would have been the dream.
Stuck in a wheelhouse. Oh boy. Yeah, oh, big deal.
Too bad.
Yeah, I got to fish the rest of the night. Oh, being stuck in the vehicle. For me, as an ice guide, I can remember a snowstorm where it was really wet, heavy snow, but the temperatures were brutally cold. And so this wet, heavy snow would come down and it would create almost like concrete. You couldn't plow it. The drifts were so hard, you were kind of rolling over it, but then you would break through and get stuck. And water started coming up on the lake because I think just the snow was so wet and heavy. And it was the last day of, or the last weekend that wheelhouses and fish houses could be on the lake. So I had set a bunch of customers that night, evening, into the next day. That storm rolled in, and I just started knocking on doors and calling people, hey, you got to get moving. We got to get you moving. We got to get off this lake. And it took us all day long. One of my other buddies, Mitch, who's always got my back, he had a strap hooked up to the front of his truck. He had a strap hooked up to the front of his truck, a strap hooked up to the back of his truck. He would hook up to the customers. I would hook up to Mitch, and then I would plow. And we did that all day long. And as soon as I would get stuck, or unstuck, I would undo the strap, and I'd keep plowing. And then I get stuck again. He'd race up to me, hook the strap up, pull me backwards, and we pulled people out all day long. Even to the point where there was people trying to get off the lake that were not our guide customers, and we were helping them out. It was that bad. People are desperate. They're like, you get into those situations where, you're just being a good person by helping people out. I've helped so many people on the lake. I always tell people, whether it's customers, listeners, anybody I bump into, if you see someone stuck on the lake, just help them, because we've all been there.
Amen. Yep. You really need to do that. You got to be a good steward out there. It's no fun being stuck, especially if you don't have a good shovel or something like that. Like, you just got to go help them.
I get buried all the time. So
I know how it feels.
I've been stuck in, you name it, slush, heavy snow, plow hung up, ranger hung up, snowmobile buried, you name it. You're going to get stuck out there. You fish enough, you're going to get stuck. It's going to happen. So, I always believe in karma and good karma. If you're a good person and you're helping people out and doing the right thing, good karma is going to bless you, moving forward. So, I keep saying I'm not going to tease out the episode, but I've had such a fun day in this fish house catching fish. Let's talk a little bit about underwater cameras, because that's the gist of our show. We've got underwater cameras on steroids here today with big screen TVs. I can think back of times when I was a kid where I had my underwater camera out, and I always tell people I learned so much as an angler, jigging, how to be a better angler, how fish react to baits, different species of fish, how they react to each other in the water. What are some of your, favorite memories of underwater cameras? I mean, I think we've all learned a lot, just like forward-facing sonars going through it right now. Cameras had their time where like everybody wanted a camera. That was the thing to buy. And, they were talking about outlawing them, right? They were going to outlaw underwater cameras. They're still here today, and they're still a very useful tool in your arsenal as an angler. onX Fish is the best tool I have ever used for finding new lakes to target. Download the app today to get fisheries information in the state of Minnesota and Wisconsin, along with research tools for serious anglers and beginners alike. Filter lakes by species, trophy only, keeper fish, abundance, or all of the above. Plan which lakes to fish with the app, navigate to the accesses, and once you're there, use the onX best-in-class weather imagery and fishing hotspots to catch more fish. onX Fish is a phenomenal tool both on and off the water for discovering new fishing opportunities, many of which you would never known existed. onX Fish, the app that is changing the game on ice.
It truly is. I have one with me all the time. The thing that kind of hooked me on underwater cameras was, obviously you drop down and you see the fish and stuff. But what I started doing is why are these fish here? And I would drop down and start looking around and seeing that bottom content, seeing what's going on in the water. Is it the clarity? Is there bugs in the water? There's a lot of that stuff you can't see with a sonar. You can't tell if the weeds are green or not. You can't tell if there's bug life going around in the water. And that's kind of where I got hooked on cameras. And I still, to this day, if I drill a hole scouting for a hard house, a camera goes down the hole and I'm looking to see what's down there. I'm trying to find that edge, trying to find all that other stuff. So obviously I want to see fish, but I'm more focused on what I'm looking at in the bottom.
Yeah, it's a useful tool in my arsenal. I almost always have a handheld camera, a camera with me at all times. I keep one in my wheelhouse. I keep one in my truck. I keep one in my boat. Just a useful tool. I like the handheld cameras, like the Pursuit, for example. You can You can record off of the pursuit. The viewing's amazing. It's amazing, these cameras nowadays how clear they are. Even if you have less than ideal water clarity, let's say you got a little color to the water or whatever, you can still see with the cameras. And I use them for identifying a lot of things. Yes, I use my forward facing sonar a lot, but there's times where I'm looking at fish, let's say a big pack of fish in a school. I'll walk over to that school, drop my camera down to see what they are as far as size, structure. Because sometimes when they're bunched up, I don't care how far you zoom in, you just see those globes. You drop the camera down there, you can tell, oh, they're decent sized gills, or, oh, they're crappies. It's a bunch of small crappies. I've had it a few times where they were tighter to the bottom, so I just assumed they were bluegills, and they were actually crappies, just kind of relating to the bottom. So there's so much you learn with that camera, and it's still a very useful tool to have as an angler in general all year long.
Yeah, you really need to just have one with you. I've got one in the boat all summer, got one in my truck, got one in my wheelhouse. Every wheelhouse I have an underwater camera in it. I think that adds to the experience of it, but it's such a useful tool to have, and I don't ever foresee them going away, because they really do have a lot of good stuff to give you.
Plus, you can kill a day. You go out and you put an underwater camera down, and all of a sudden you're like, you start at 8 a.m. You look at your watch and, man, it's 2:00. We've been out here all day focused on these cameras, and because it's so cool. I mean, we're sitting in the house right now, so I give you a little bit of a visual. We have big screens right now that with hundreds of fish down there as we're recording the podcast. I think me, just me as a person, now that I have kids, thinking back to when I was a kid, there's no better way to spend time in a house or to get kids roped into ice fishing than using an underwater camera. I mean, that's what hooked me for sure. I mean, I was a decent ice angler, but once I started using a camera, I became a better angler, and I became absolutely hooked.
I was convinced. So when I started ice fishing, I was pretty traditional. My dad would send me out with a Swedish auger, and if you don't know what that is, you need to look it up.
Oh, yeah.
They're a kind of a hateful tool.
Very.
And he would sit in the truck and watch me drill a hole with that thing, and then I'd sit in a bucket, no flasher, no nothing, drop down, and you're just jigging off bottom. And I remember how cold, and to this day, it almost makes me wonder why I kept ice fishing, because it was kind of miserable, but I enjoyed it. And I got kids of my own now, and I take them out, and we sit in these nice portables and these hard houses and stuff. But the camera is such a cool tool to keep them interested. Kids, you have to keep them interested when they're fishing. You have to keep them going on it, and you have to kind of go with what they're doing. And the camera allows them to fish a lot longer than they would without it, just because it's an entertainment factor.
Oh, I'm glued to it. I mean, I call it adult daycare. I mean, let alone kids. Kids love technology, so you put them in front of the camera. I know my kids, if they were out here today, you would have a hard time, pulling them out of this wheelhouse. They would just stay in here all day long. It's cool to set up houses and get them set up like this, especially if you have an HDMI output on your camera. The Pursuit has it, the Quest has it. You take that HDMI output and you plug it into a TV, and now it comes alive. Now you're seeing that in high definition on a big screen. Pretty awesome. Hey, you talk about your family, your kids. I have kids. I'm a family man. My life, I feel like my dad sometimes, because like I say dad things now that, when I don't feel like a dad, but I am a dad. And, bringing kids up today versus when we grew up ice fishing, I'm very similar to you in the sense where I fished out in front of my parents' house with a hand Mora auger, right? Super dull blades. I sat out there with a jiggle stick, boots that were terrible, gear that was,
bread bags on your feet.
Yeah, bread bags, the Blaze Orange, all the crummy gear. Our kids have it made now. We're sitting in a fish house, a wheelhouse. We have big screen TVs. We got cameras. We got electronics. We have forward-facing sonar. We have nice gear that keeps us warm. We have boots that keep us warm. What is your kids now, like my kids, they're not going to go ice fishing unless they have, forward facing sonar camera. I mean, my son will sit outside, but my daughter, unless there's a wheelhouse involved, she's not going. Are your kids the same way, or your family the same way? Would they rather be in the wheelhouse, or do they go outside and get after it?
So my son's 8. His birthday was not too long ago, and his only wish for his birthday was to go sleep in a fish house, which I thought was really cool. But that being said, he loves portable fishing, and that's got me hyped up. I really love, I'm a run and gun guy when I go ice fishing. I love doing that, hopping around. I don't even sit in a portable very often. I'm usually sitting outside. And a couple weeks ago, we took him out. Actually, on this lake, we were looking for some walleyes. We set up on a spot. It was kind of cold outside, and it was early yet. It wasn't really prime time yet. And so Finn, my son, goes, "Yeah, I'm going to go hole hop." Heck yeah, go for it. And I was watching him out the window, and he'd go up to a hole and drop his flasher and fish for 5-10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds, reel up, drop to the other hole, fish. And I was watching him, and I don't know, the proud dad moment, I suppose you can call it. It was just really cool to see my son out there hole hopping around, standing on the ice, jigging for walleyes out of every hole he could find. So my daughter, on the other hand, she's 4. So she really loves the hard houses.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, well, and you don't want to ruin them, because I know my daughter, when she was young, I kept her out too long on the ice when we were hole hopping. Because my son, he's out fishing right now today. It's cold. We're in a wheelhouse. He's out chasing crappies in a basin back home. I've talked to him several times on the phone, and he'll sit out there all day long. He doesn't care. He's got a nice suit. He's got a float suit. He's got good gear. And he's passionate about it, even when he's younger, because my son is younger than my daughter. But he's always been into it, and he's had a lot more patience, but maybe I don't know why. He always liked being outside and being out there. My daughter took her, and she just, she didn't like it. She was cold. It wasn't that she didn't like the fishing part, but she was cold, and I kept her out too long, and it took me a long time to get her back on the ice, right? It wasn't until I got a wheelhouse where she's like, "Oh, I could get back into ice fishing." And even portables. I mean, my wife too, I think when we were dating, I'd take her out ice fishing in the portable, and back then I didn't have the greatest heater or anything. So, she was cold. So I think between those two, I sort of ruined them on ice fishing until I got the wheelhouse. And then boom, they were right back in it. Food, you could have snacks, you could have the TV on, you're jigging, you're catching fish. And that's the one thing about the hard house that it took me a long time to get used to, because I am a hole hopper. Like everyone knows, I like ice trolling, man. Driving around with underwater cameras, looking at weed beds, forward facing sonar out in basins, drilling holes, getting on top of fish, being aggressive and active ice fishing. That's what I love. Even moving portables rapidly, just to ice troll all day long. That's my favorite thing to do. So the biggest thing, I guess the biggest thing that I had to get used to of sitting in a wheelhouse is being patient and letting those fish come through. But also it was figuring out a spot that the fish were cruising, right? Because you can certainly set your wheelhouse down and not be in a spot where you're going to have very much activity. If I'm sitting in a wheelhouse, I want to have activity on a regular basis, whether it's walleye perch fishing, whether it's crappie bluegill. If I'm sitting there, I had endure patience, but if it's not working, I'm out. I'm going to be back outside, because I'm always thinking, looking out the window, okay, maybe they're 100 yards over there or whatever. But I had to teach myself sort of patience. But, at the end of the day, like if you're looking to keep a few fish, for example, sitting in a wheelhouse, if the fish are cruising through, it's amazing when you're there for a full day or even a 24-hour experience, keep a few fish that you throw in the bucket. You actually catch quite a few at the end of the day when in the bucket, even though it feels sometimes like you're not on top of them. You might be catching them at close to the same rate that you would be hole hopping, if that makes sense.
Yep,
because when you're hole hopping, you're moving and you're getting them. But in the wheelhouse, it seems like you're just sitting there with nothingness for a while and nothing's going on. So you almost have to like retrain your brain.
You really do. And setting these wheelhouses, for me, we kind of touched on this. We're used to being with everybody all the time. So you're always trying to get up. You're always looking for a golden highway. You're looking for a spot that just like what we're looking at here, where it's just nonstop.
Yep.
And that doesn't always happen. If you're setting up on a walleye spot, you might have a couple hours of the day that's slower, and Your morning and evenings are going to be better and stuff, but finding that kind of middle ground is really fun. And I kind of get both worlds, because running the rentals, I get to run around scouting by myself, and I get to do the kind of active fishing. I go drill a whole bunch of holes and looking at cameras. I'm fishing a little bit, trying to find where all this stuff's going. So I get that part of it out of my system. Then I get to go set a house there, and somebody gets to experience the catching part of it.
Now, setting wheelhouses as a guide, that's sort of intriguing for people, because I get a lot of people that ask me like, hey, where would you set up if you were putting up a wheelhouse? I get asked all the time, like Mille Lacs Lake, Winnie, all around. Hey, I got my wheelhouse. Where would you set up? And that's a loaded question, because that changes throughout the year. But out here in Ottertail County, let's just start with panfish, right? What do you think's the easiest location on a lake to set up in? To set up a wheelhouse and be successful.
100% basin. Basin's
Sure.
one of the best spots out here. We have so many of these kind of mud, mid-depth basins. There's a lot of bloodworms. There's a lot of just invertebrates down there. A lot of bugs coming out of that mud. And it's a great place. Like we've seen today, we've seen walleyes. We've seen everything's kind of swim through here. So that's a really good place to start. The cool thing about the basins is it's not necessarily, when we talk about walleye fish and stuff, we talk about spot on the spots, get real precise where you're setting this stuff. With this basin stuff, you're really not doing that. It's kind of a racetrack almost, if you think of it that way. These fish are moving constantly. You just have to get in the area, and eventually they're going to come underneath you. Weeds are always a great bet for catching. You'll catch a little bit of everything in weeds, but weeds kind of around this area anyway, they have their time and place. Early and late is when weeds really shine around here. So the basin is a really good kind of, that whole midwinter time period is really good in the basins.
Yeah, basin, that's my go-to, especially midwinter. January, February, it's hard to beat a wintering basin. And I used to just think of basins as, the deepest part of the depressions of the lake. And that's not always the case. Forward-facing sonar has really opened my eyes to the extent of the basin. Fish can be anywhere in the basin, but setting up a house, yes, that makes sense. Kind of sliding on the edge of the deepest part of that basin. Or I look at let's say like an inside turn of the basin where it might capture those fish before they slide up onto a hump, for example. I know there's been lots of times where I've set up my houses kind of like an inside turn, if you will, before it slid up onto a sunken hump, because in the evening, all those bluegills, crappies, walleyes that were out in that wintering basin would slide up towards the weeds during the nighttime, right? They'd get up onto that hump. So setting up there was key to getting those rushes of fish, especially during those peak feeding periods. Now, I always tell people as well, like, are you looking to set up your wheelhouse for daytime spots, or are you set up for nighttime spots? Because those can be those can be entirely different areas and entirely different fishing experiences based on day or night.
They really can be. Those are the big feeding windows. So, you're not gonna eat a sandwich in your bedroom. You're not.
Yeah,
if that kind of makes sense.
That's a great analogy.
You're going to go to the kitchen and eat your sandwich, or the dining room. So you got to set up in the kitchen.
Unless my wife's gone,
right?
Then I might watch football in my room and eat a sandwich.
Right.
But yes, great analogy.
But yeah, you got to set up in the dining room if you want to be there at night. And a lot of the rental stuff, we do midday check-ins, and that's pretty normal for travel and all that stuff. So we kind of focus a little bit more on the night stuff, the evening, the morning, and then through the night. But it's just like you said, it's rapidly different no matter, and its species can change too. Species can dictate where you're going to set that house for a better evening bite or a better daytime bite or whatever it may be. So there's a lot of thought that goes into it.
The Dialed In Angling podcast is brought to you by St. Croix Rods, handcrafting the best rods on earth for an elevated angling experience since 1948. St. Croix Rods are truly a world-class brand that has earned the respect and admirations of anglers across the planet. I trust St. Croix Rods, and you should too. Check them out at stcroixrods.com. And lake to lake, I pretty much asked you a loaded question as far as where would you set these houses, because it is a loaded question. Lake to lake are different. Some of these lakes, these fish go from the wintering basin up to the shallow water flats at night, right? And I know other lakes that they're concentrated in the weed beds, and then as soon as the evening hit, those zooplankton and everything start coming out of that mud, and then boom, all those panfish are zipping down to the deeper water. So that's why I like sometimes being on the edge of the basin or in areas where I think they're going to be cruising to and from. That way I'm just trying to capture some of those fish coming and going. And also I can think of a lot of lakes where I'll go fish panfish during the day. And then towards evening, I'm wheels up with my wheelhouse and I'm setting up on a main lake point, trying to catch a few walleyes in the evening and then overnight. And then as soon as daybreak hits and you hit that 9-10 o'clock hour, wheels up again and I'm back out pan fishing. If you can be mobile in your wheelhouse and it's your own wheelhouse that you have hooked up to your truck, for me, I've got push button hydraulics on my wheelhouse. So I push a button, I'm up in the air and I'm gone, right? I can stay pretty darn mobile in this thing as long as we get a year like this where there's not a ton of snow.
Yeah.
Mobility is key in any fishing situation, but if you do that, you're in for a really good bite. I do that a lot with perch and walleyes, guiding and then personally as well, where I'll set up in the morning for walleyes, perch fish all day long, and then boom, I'm back walleye fishing in the evening.
Yeah, one thing we really like to push on is, we're not necessarily moving our houses 2-3 times a day. We're more than happy to move our house if we have a bad night or something like that. But we really encourage people, bring your portable, bring your side-by-side or four-wheel or snowmobile, whatever it is with you, and we like to tailor trips to people. So if you're coming up and you want to catch walleyes, bring all your panfish stuff, because I'll send you to a few areas where you can go during the middle of the day and go catch panfish, and you be mobile like that. So we try to tailor it to what you want. We're also very honest about what's biting, what the best bite is, and what to kind of expect when you come up. So we just like chasing fish. We try to figure out where they're all at.
I think most outfits, when you call them, they're pretty honest, right? I think anyway. I think people are honest. Certain times of the year when the bite slows down, they're honest about it. Look at on Dialed In Angling, we have people that, and guides that give great fishing reports throughout the year, and they're honest, like, hey, the bite's a little slow here, or we're catching walleyes, we're not catching perch, yada, yada. That's why finding out information from guides like yourself, like if you're coming to a region, I know for me, if people call me and say, hey, how's the bite, on a particular, I'm very honest with them.
Yep.
Hey, it was really good, but it slowed down. And fishing's fishing. You can have days where it's super hot and then it's cold and then back and forth again. It should have been here yesterday type of scenarios. That's midwinter fishing. You take late January into February. It can be like that. It can be real hit or miss. But doing a bite like we did today where it's panfish oriented, I always think, the walleyes might be shut down, but it always seems like somewhere you can go and catch panfish.
It really is. And we have a really kind of cool bite around here. A lot of our lakes are like this, where you can pretty much catch them throughout the whole day and through the whole night, especially the bluegills. And a lot of people, I'm kind of used to it, I guess, because I grew up here and this is just kind of normal to me. But a lot of people come up and stay in the rentals and they're like, man, we caught them. We had to put the rods away at 2 a.m. because we had to get some sleep. I'm like, well, yeah, that's
I've me personally, I've only experienced it maybe 3 or 4 times where I was targeting bluegills at night. And, prior to that, I didn't think they fed at night. I caught lots of crappies at night and I've caught walleyes and other species, but for some reason, it just seemed like bluegills were not night biters, but they definitely are. I've had some crazy successful nights. I remember one particular bite. The bluegills would come through this trough. It was like there was a hump and then a trough and then a basin, right? And it was honest. The only way you can describe it is it's like a funnel for fish, right? You think of like deer bottlenecks or funnel. All the bluegills would come through there. Well, they would start about 2 a.m. Okay. They'd come through at 2 a.m. and they'd bite all the way through until sunup. And then they would be out in the wintering basin. But I mean, the size of the bluegills we'd catch in this spot, and no crappies, which was weird. It was all bluegills. I remember it was about 16 feet deep, and giant bluegills coming through there from 2 a.m. till, sunup. And so at the time, I was probably high school age, college maybe, or freshman in college. But I remember getting up at 2 a.m. and my dad, I was still living at home because my dad was getting up to get a glass of water or go to the bathroom or something. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm standing in my ice fishing gear. Like, I'm going ice fishing. And he's like, "You're a nut." And like, I know, but I was trying to explain this bluegill bite because I did it a lot. Any free time I had, I was going out there at 2:00 in the morning until sunup. So that was really my first exposure of catching bluegills at night, and an absolute blast. And now, like I said, there's 3 bites that I can remember that it was just like, clockwork, where these things showed up there and they were biting. Another one was the opposite. It wasn't a trough or a basin. It was a hump. They'd come out of this wintering basin, and this wintering base was massive. So at the time, it was pre-forward facing sonar. It was really challenging to get on top of those fish during the day, but they all slid up. When I say all, I mean your flasher or graph was completely full of fish from top to bottom on top of this hump, because everything from that basin was coming up on top of that hump. And the majority of the catch were bluegills.
Yeah, it's so fun. And these, go back to these basins a little bit. They're not all the same. You can kind of set up anywhere in them, but one thing forward-facing sonar is kind of taught is there is definitely bug-rich spots in these basins. They're not all the same. There's a few lakes around here that have massive basins in them, and the fish don't wander the entire thing, even though it's all the same depth. It's all the same, looks the same on camera underwater and everything, but they're not the same. We've proven this in our boat open water with, it's like suspended walleyes and suspended muskies. You're in the middle of nowhere, but you catch them on the same waypoints every year. There's something in that bottom that's really holding those fish. So that's kind of one of the kind of cool things that you kind of pick up on being able to do this all the time. And I love sharing this stuff with people. So a lot of times when I'm checking people in, it's just me doing this. I'll have somebody waiting at the access because I'm still talking to the guys I'm checking in, and you're just getting through a conversation, and you just can't stop.
Well, we talk about basins a lot on Dialed In Angling, and in the winter months, you're right. I mean, prior to technology, even graphs, it was really difficult to just go out and find fish in a basin, right? Let's say prior to electronics, people would go out to quote unquote or air quote the crappie hole, they'd call it, and they'd go out there and set up, and you put your dead sticks down or your bobber lines or your rad rails down, and
one set a little higher,
one set a little lower, and then it was sort of just like throwing darts at a dartboard. But now that we're able to break down basins, like you said, there's areas within the basin that are very rich, very fertile. Some of them are very soft bottoms, but then there's also some hard spots in the basin that might hold other species of fish or hold fish at certain times of the year. I think of hard basin spots where I can find jumbo perch, for example. But then other spots in the basin where you think, okay, yep, I got to be in the deepest part of the basin or the softest bottom of the basin where all these invertebrates are at. But then I find a rock pile and it's loaded with gills. So, I think the exploration of basins has really just begun, or else we've just started understanding them better. Before it was like I would lay down icons in the basin because I didn't really understand why they were there. But like you said, it always seemed to hold fish in that particular area. Well, now with underwater cameras, with forward-facing sonar, just as technology gets better, we're able to really discover some of these areas and figure out why these fish are here day or night.
Yeah. We talk about forward-facing sonar a lot and how it's like we talk like we've had to drill less holes to find more fish. I kind of find myself doing the opposite now. We used to go break down a basin before that stuff. You drill 100 holes and you're dropping your flasher in every single hole looking for these fish. Well, now I'm just so curious on it that, man, well, what's over there? What's over there? I got to go check this spot. I got to go check that. And I'm drilling more holes and I'm spending more time focusing on why fish are doing what they're doing. And it's really cool. And I keep a journal, and I think a lot of fishermen should keep a journal, just how they caught fish, what they were doing, where they were at, kind of the basic stuff. One reason why is it helps you see a lot of patterns. They stick out like sore thumbs when you can look back through that journal. But it's very interesting to see why fish are doing stuff at a certain time of year. And it helps you so much farther as far as finding fish any other time of year.
Yeah, just like the cameras saying that they should outlaw cameras back in the day. Now they say, we should outlaw forward-facing sonar. It's not the end all. Nope. I chase fish around basins like you can't believe, where you can't catch up to them, and I just keep drilling and drilling and drilling. It's not going to end fishing. Yes, I think anglers themselves are really going to have to police themselves as far as not over harvesting. what I've learned, if anything, forward facing sonar, there's a lot of areas where I get into deep water situations where I'm like, hey, these fish are too deep.
Yep.
I'm not even going to fish them. I do that a lot. I just did it the other day. Pete, who guides for me, we went to this lake. I do a lot of scouting, just like you. And I was scouting for dialed in angling. We were also scouting for some guide trips. And I got out there, and all the crappies were like 35 feet and deeper. I mean, there was just like someone drew a line, right? And I told Pete, I'm like, these fish are too deep. I don't want to kill a bunch of fish, just to catch them. Most of the time when I get into situations or I'm bringing customers fishing, I just want to catch fish. And so I'll set up with my forward facing sonar where I'm seeing shallower basin fish 9 times out of 10. And I forget and it's amazing when you set up shallower too. Seems like you are capitalizing and catching more of those bigger fish. Even if the numbers aren't there, the big fish a lot of times are there.
Oh, 100% right. And that's a big thing, the conservationist in us. We all have to police ourselves. Like in my rentals, we have all the regulations posted so you know what you're looking at, but we really encourage people to release like 9-inch or bigger gills. We want people to release those 13 or bigger crappies. We want to sustain fisheries. We want to see them grow better and bigger fish and more fish. And we really try to focus on that. You have to be a good steward of the sport, or we're not going to have it for our grandkids or my kid. We got to want it around for a long time.
Yeah, and customers understand that.
Yeah.
They want to come back and experience what they did the year before. They know if they wipe it out, it's gone forever. Yeah. And I'm all about the fish fry. I grew up with family fish fries. Every Sunday it was tradition in my house. We had a fish fry. My dad's friends, actually one of my good buddies, Phil, who you're friends with.
Yep.
Phil would come over and we would do a fish fry. Phil Jensen is a good friend of ours. He's out in this Ottertail area. He's lives on Ottertail Lake. And Phil was the first one to introduce us to mac and cheese to our fish fries. We always had fish and I forget what else, but as soon as Phil brought mac and cheese, that's a game changer for the fish fry. If you've never tried homemade mac and cheese and fish, they go together like peanut butter and jelly. I'm telling you, it is a tradition now. But honestly, every Sunday we had a fish fry. And so I'm all about the family fish fry. I like keeping a few fish. I like keeping a few bluegills. I like keeping perch every once in a while. Walleyes, all good. I love eating fish. But I fish every day. So for me, it's more about the experience, right. The hunt. I talk about the hunt a lot. It's one thing of catching the fish, but the hunt is what I'm into a lot, of finding fish in different areas, hunting down crappies, hunting down bluegills, hunting down perch, hunting down walleyes. But then once I find them, it's also about the experience like we did today. I don't get to sit in a wheelhouse and put an underwater camera down on a big screen TV very often. So to do this on Dialed in Angling is a dream come true. I appreciate you bringing us out to a lake that you guide on. We're not going to name the lake in Ottertail County. There's 1,000 of them. So we'll let the listeners try to figure out what lake we were on. But to get out and to put underwater cameras down, I highly encourage anyone listening to this to experience this. You will be hooked on ice fishing. Your kids will be hooked on ice fishing. This is an experience you can enjoy as a family. You can enjoy with buddies. You can go to a destination. Always have the underwater camera with you. You're going to have a great experience.
You really are. And you talk about the hunt a little bit. I got a kind of a cool story on that. So when I was 16, I stole my grandpa's boat. He knew I took it, but finally got my driver's license. So I hooked up to his boat and I had a 4-foot by 4-foot map of Ottertail County. And I would stand back about 10 feet and I had a dart. And I would throw the dart at the map. And that's the lake I went and fished that day. And I did that for 2 years. And that was probably the 2 funnest years of my life. I didn't really necessarily have a species in mind. I just went to these lakes and I started exploring, hunting it. And it was really, really cool. And I maybe made it to 200 or 300. Maybe. Yeah. And that's probably a little high, but just that puts it in perspective just how many lakes are here. I did that for 2 years and I didn't even scratch the surface.
So on my day off, my son and I started doing that, where we would pick different lakes and then go experience that lake. And same thing, we had no idea, what the lake was all about. Well, now with Onyx Fish, now you can track down the species. You can really dial it in, if you will, the lake you're going after. But we would go out to these lakes and, with no preconceived notions, I would scan around, right? I would side image, then I use forward facing sonar to look at the vegetation, see what kind of structures in the lake, water clarity, and then just start fishing. Like, oh, there's a school of crappies. You'd see them, or wow, there's a bunch of walleyes on that hump, and so it's really neat how many lakes that you're like, man, I drove by that my whole life, and did not know that had that kind of fish in it, especially now, like in the summer, the amount of lakes, let's just say stocked fisheries that I go to, it's a small lake that have massive walleyes in it that I had no idea that held massive walleyes, right? It might be a lake that I've known where I've pan fished it or bass fished it, but I had no idea that lake had massive walleyes. It has massive walleyes. Or a lake I'll go to that has giant largemouth that I, maybe only pan fished it once or never fished it before. And then you get in there. I remember a lake that my son and I found that had enormous largemouth that I had no idea existed. And it's really close to my house, where you can go out and catch a 4 to 5 pound largemouth. I mean, that's what's cool about Minnesota. That's what's cool about Ottertail County. Hey man, I really appreciate you taking me out to this spot, being able to share a fish house with you, being able to experience what we did today. I think our listeners and viewers of Dialed In Angling are really going to love this episode in general. So thank you very much. Randin Olson of Lockjaw Guide Service. If you're looking to rent a house, if you're looking to musky fish, if you're looking to walleye fish in the Ottertail County, it's hard to beat this guy. He's a great guide and a fantastic guy. Thank you so much, Randin. I've had a great day, bud.
I truly appreciate being on here. I really do. It's been a blast today, and I can't wait to see this air.
Awesome. Well, you're going to want to tune in this week. Until next week, I'm Tony Roach. This has been Dialed In Angling Podcast.